Hello everyone, this is Stren from ExtremeRigs.net, and today we are doing a review of the Caselabs S3. And this is a case that I was really excited about when it was first announced. It was Caselabs' first mITX case, and you know, Caselabs, if you know anything about them, they're a boutique case builder from LA. They manufacture in LA, and they really try and address the needs of the high-end enthusiast. Everything's made out of aluminum. You can choose different colors for different panels, and there's a lot of enthusiast-only features that they kind of pioneered. So this was really the first case to kind of say, okay, a lot of people like ITX builds these days, and there's a lot of powerful ITX hardware now. You know, you have boards like the Impact board, which has a crazy VRM section and is great for memory overclocking. You have really powerful single graphics cards. You have powerful graphics cards that are 2 cores on one. So you know, just because it's ITX doesn't mean that it has to be either cheap or weak. So this was the first case to really say, okay, there are people out there who want ITX and they want to water cool it, and we're going to give them all the Caselabs features that they'd expect, kind of shrunk down to ITX size. So let's take a quick run over of the design of the case and the features. You can see in the front here we have the regular flex bay system. These are basically 5 1/4 inch bays, and you can completely reconfigure them. They can be used as 5 1/4 inch bays, or you can use them to mount radiators, as we see here. Or you can get hard drive mounts, or you know, there's a whole bunch of accessories you can get to basically do whatever you like with them. We've also mounted an Aquero up the top here. And you get the power reset and USB panel. And again, as with everything at Caselabs, you can customize it. If you don't want power and reset switches, you can save some money and not have them. If you want USB, you can pay the extra and get that. One of the unique things about the case is, you know, the double windows. So you can have a window on the right or not, and you can have a window on the other side that we showed you before. And all of these panels are quick release, so they're just kind of clipped on. But you can see, let me turn this around. But while they're quick to come off, it doesn't mean they're weak. Again, they're strong aluminum. You can see, you know, I can flex that just a small amount. And then you get access to everything in there. And each panel is like this. So sometimes it's handy to have a screwdriver just to help pop them off. So you can see, you know, in a matter of seconds you can get access to the case. And that's without using any doors or anything like that. You maintain a very clean look. So inside the case, on this side, you know, you have the horizontally mounted motherboard, which sits on a tray. So you don't have to remove the motherboard if you want to take it out. You can just remove the 4 screws on this tray. And you can say, well, how does that help me? Because this isn't a traditional slide out the back Caselabs tray, this is a vertical one. So you do have to release your graphics card from the PCI support, and then there's 4 screws. The advantage, of course, is that these screws are accessible while the graphics card remains attached to the motherboard. So that's really the advantage here. Otherwise you could just unscrew the motherboard. Underneath, in this section, you can mount a 3 1/2 inch hard drive if you have a mechanical. And then there's a slot also for 2 2 1/2 inch drives. So here we've mounted a Samsung SSD. This is a reference 980 graphics card, a GTX 980. So you can see there's plenty of clearance above it and to the side. There's probably about 2 to 3 inches above it you know, even after including the water block, which sticks out from the card. And then there's probably 3 inches in front of it. I have fitted this with a 7990 card, which is really long, and you can fit that too. If we turn the case around, you'll see here you have your power supply, which mounts underneath the motherboard. This can fit a full-size power supply. A lot of ITX cases only fit small form factor power supplies. So there's no compromise here, and that's really what this design is about. If we turn this around so we can open this last panel. So you can see, if we tilt this up, you can see the power supply for an 850 watt. There's still a good amount of space in front of it for cabling. While you can fit a really long kind of 1600 watt supply, that's not going to leave you a lot of room for cabling if you want to fit something in the front here. You can see we do have a radiator running along here. It's kind of hard to see in this light. This is an EKPE radiator, which is about 38 millimeters thick. I would advise definitely going with a slim to medium radiator. You can fit very thick radiators if you want, but again, it's going to compromise the space you have left for a reservoir and pump. Here we have an EK DDC X-Res, so the pump is mounted to the reservoir itself, and it's all mounted to this radiator. And there's just enough clearance there to make that work with the 38 millimeter. At the top here we have another PE radiator, another 38 millimeter thick radiator. Again, these are both 240 radiators. And you can see that the fit here is quite close. So if you're going to be using thicker radiators, you're going to start running into problems where both radiators will start to kind of hit each other. So if you're running 2 radiators, definitely go slim. And there's just enough space left over here for the Aquero to mount. So if we move on to the base, you can just about see, well, you can't with this light, but there's a removable panel at the base here. You could fit a radiator there, you could fit a fan there if you wanted to. I found this panel most useful actually for being able to get my hand in. I have pretty big hands, and so you know, I needed to access a port kind of in there, and with the cabling I couldn't get there. So that was nice to have that. You can also mount the power supply either way. There's space on top to let it breathe, and there's a vent at the bottom as well to let it breathe if you mount it the other way. Doesn't matter which way you go. There is space for a triple slot graphics card. And this will mainly interest only air coolers, and there's very few triple slot coolers around now. These days, if a card has a serious cooling problem, manufacturers generally give it an all-in-one solution like they did with the 295X2. So this third slot's a bit redundant now, but it is there if you need it. And you could use that for, you know, other things that mount there, which don't necessarily connect to a PCI. So it's useful. It does make the case a little wider. I kind of would prefer it if it was just a 2-slot and it was a little narrower, but it's not a big deal at all. One of the other features this case has as an option is this drop-in mount at the top. You can get this case with or without this. It is a cost adder. If you don't have it, basically this whole top panel would have a radiator mount, but if you wanted to take that panel off, you'd have to take the entire frame apart. If you get the drop-in mount, there are 6 screws here that hold the drop-in mount in. So you undo those 6 screws, you can pull the radiator and the mount out without having to take the frame apart. And that's really nice, because as you're kind of test fitting components, and working out which fittings you need where, you're going to be playing around with it a lot, and that just makes your life so much easier. It's really worth the extra few bucks to get that option. So what about price? ITX cases, generally the expectation is that they would be cheap because most people think of ITX builds as being quite cheap. The case starts, I think the cheapest you can configure it is 180 bucks, but bear in mind this is aluminum. Now, if you were to add on all the extra options like I have, like the USB, the power and reset, the windows, the drop-in mount, the grey paint job, all of that comes out to 306 bucks. So you can see, and this is the case with a lot of Caselabs cases, if you look at the starting price, you're like, oh, that's not so bad. But then you add on all the options, and before you know it, it's like, oh my god, that's a lot more than I thought. It would be hard to configure this for much more. You can add pedestals, that will increase the cost quite a lot, but generally you're going to be in that kind of 300-ish range. So initially that might be quite shocking to you, but if you think about the kind of hardware that's gonna go in here, for example, we have a Maximus 6 Impact with a 4770K, we have a GTX 980 graphics card, and I added up basically everything that goes in here, which is a high-end build, but it's not as high-end as you could go. You could spend a lot more money on it. You could get a bigger SSD, you could get mechanical drives, you could get a Kingpin card, or a 295X2, or a Titan Z, and that would push up the price hugely. And so, when we priced up everything that went in the case, the price was about $2,600. So if you add on the $300 for the case, you're essentially at just about a hair under $3,000. So the case would be about 10% of, let's say, a typical budget that goes, a typical build that goes in this case. So in that sense, the price I don't think is extortionate, given that you get all these features. For me, after all the cases I've seen and played with, this is pretty much as close to perfection as you can get. We really do like this case. Caselabs have done a great job innovating, and it's really our favorite ITX case. Not everyone of you is going to like the aesthetic. It is a bit boxy, it is a bit plain, but the actual proportions of the case and the way it sits are really spot on. So we give the case a gold award. We really do like it. We're a big fan of Caselabs anyway, and this is another case that has not disappointed us, but only exceeded our already very high expectations from them. So a great job to the Caselabs team. And that's it from us on the video. Do stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to get information on when all our new videos come out. We're really trying to push a lot of videos this year. So stay in touch with us in the comments. That's it from me.